Hello everyone, this is a demonstration for the Z-Opticals template. So here we have this shot and you could see this shot as your final comp depth, where you have already finished your lighting treatment, your materials. So you have already split all the lights and materials, grade them, treat them, rejoining them, and now you have your final comp with already 95% of what you needed to achieve in your comp is already done, and you have this final pre-render ready to do some lens design and defocusing. You have already joined all your deep assets with the deep data in each of those. So you have your final deep output too. So what I mean by that is that you are going to have on one side RGB-AC for your shot. So you need to have depth for this template to work, and you're also going to have your final deep, where you have already joined all your deep assets into a single data sequence. So here you're going to have your deep data describing the entire scene. And the other asset that you need to have is you need a camera. Without these three assets, RGB-AC, deep, and camera, the template cannot work. So you need those three. So as I say here you have like the area where you load your critical assets, and here you have the area where you can feed the optional ones, so being an ST map generator and motion vectors. Let me also quickly describe the template itself. So let's take a look at it, and you're going to see this kind of vertical organization with horizontal stripes, and each of these stripes and backdrops is like a lens treatment that you can do both stereo field or in a single dimension, like a classic 2D comp treatment. So you can do some treatment on the BG or FG field or in the entire space. At the center you're gonna find the core of the template, which is the camera controls that manages all the aspects of the template, and at the core you find the two bokeh nodes, and then the fields are being joined in here. So these camera controls are also going to manage these two Z-Opticals that you're going to find at the top and at the bottom. So you kind of have this sandwich treatment of Z-Opticals with the two nodes at the extremes and the focusing on the center of the template. So having said that, very basic description, and let's start feeding the assets on the top backdrop here. So let's get the assets for the shot, and we are gonna want to get our deep and RGB-AC, and we're gonna connect the deep to the final deep and the final RGB-AC. Let's get our comp camera here. It's connected there, and because I have motion vectors included in this sequence, I'm just gonna plug this onto this side, and the ST map generator tool I'm gonna connect it there. Also, I'm gonna have this lens distortion in mind because it's going to be applied on the second Z-Opticals pass on this template. So let's go back to top, and here you're gonna find instructions that I encourage you to read. So things like feed the backdrop with the assets, and all the important things that you have to have already set up before even starting kind of doing the creative side of things. Okay, so the next step is to connect the kernel images to the template, and I have those images in here. I have an image for the foreground, another image for the background, and let's feed them to these two main columns that you see here, to your Bokeh kernel, Bokeh kernel, and I want to use the softer one for the foreground and the more sharp one for the background. And once you do that, let's go to the camera controls, kernels and Matchbox tab, and you have your FG kernels and your BG kernels here. So let's change this from aperture blades to input on both sides of the lens, and we can now close these. And the next thing we want to do, which is step 3 in these instructions, is to link the camera projections, specifically focal distance and f-stop. We're gonna connect these, we're gonna parent those with the camera controls, so the camera control is gonna drive the cam f-stop. So I'm doing an expression here, dragging to the f-stop parameter of your camera asset, and then the focal distance is going to the focal distance here. So for now, or probably throughout the duration of your lens design, you can forget about the camera asset. It has already been linked, and we can now continue working with our control or camera controls. Okay, so our camera is linked. Let's see what other step we need to do. So after camera is linked, it says design your focal distance and f-stop in the camera controls node only. So you're not gonna be doing anything in the camera or in any other location of the template. So let's go to this monofield view. So you can see the RGBAC output here, and also the deep output for the foreground bokeh. And what I want to do is I want to grab the position here, and you're gonna see these reference values moving and sampling the deep data. I will recommend not to use these values to expression anything in the backdrop. These are not meant to be used for drive or for parent any other knob in the script, unless you know what you're doing and you want to use these for some reason. But let's say the focus is going to be fixed on this rock over here, and that's giving us a depth from camera to this object of 10.2 units. And let's put the camera focal distance of 10.2, so our focus is there. And the other thing that we have in the assets is a description of this scene that hasn't been done with a particular scale and relationship of objects and size of objects in mind. So we're gonna put this into the side, and so the word scale should be in not dit but feet, and let's change that. So we're gonna put feet in here. This is gonna change automatically inside both bokeh nodes, don't worry about that. And the word scale multiplier, we have to bring this down to 0.1. So I am already faking these setups because, as I said, the scene hasn't been done at scale. The relationships of objects and scale of individual objects and distance between objects doesn't obey any rule about real scale. But if that were the case and you know that's the case, you should leave this at 1 and just know what the world scale is for your shot. So now that we have set up the scale side of things, let's go back here. We have our focal distance already set up, and let's change this to focal distance visualization, and let's go to this deep output here, and we are gonna see that we have already picked up focus on that rock, and the depth of field that we are picking from this point in space is being driven by the cam f-stop. So let's say we change this to 2.8, and we are going to see how the depth of field has reduced, or we can use a more like middle range f-stop of 11, and we're going to see that. So if I now change to defocus image, we are going to see the output for this 11 f-stop and camera focal distance of 10.2. Another thing that I want to point out here is this box that says check if asset depth is already unnormalized. In this case, the depth in this render was actually normalized, so it looks like this. It goes from 0 to 1, and from white being near and black being far away. But because I want the depth to match the deep values, I have leave this unchecked because I want the depth to be unnormalized. So if I click in this expression node here, you're going to see that now the depth is unnormalized and reverse, in the sense that far away is white and near is dark or black. In relation to that, the Z-Optical nodes already are set up expecting that, because the check if far equals 1 style is check, and the math is set up to depth. Even if you're not going to be using this tab, because you're not going to be doing 3D bokeh defocusing with this tab, it's important to set up this anyway, so you don't have to worry about this, but I'm letting you know that is already set up, and you are only going to be focused on the remaining tabs of this gizmo or group in this case. So let's close this, and you're probably gonna be leaving this always unchecked, so the depth values always match the deep ones. As you can see, there is an expression going from the camera controls to both Z-Opticals, and now if you read that the focal distance is 10.2, if I double click one of these, you're going to see that the focal sampler value now is 10.22 in these nodes. Having said that, let's continue with the other knobs. So you're probably going to leave this like it is Bokeh channels. I'm going to be manage RGBA. We already know what this is, and again, these are the reference values, and here you have the focal length. So this passive means no matter what you do here, it's not going to change anything because it's not linked to anything. But if for some reason you're still designing your camera at this stage and you're in charge of the camera layout, design, etc., and you need to link this knob to your camera asset knob, you can do that, and by changing this, you're gonna probably also be changing how the bokeh nodes render the look of the focusing. So let's say your camera has a 50, or your camera has a, let's do something more extreme, an 18 and you change this to a 50, you're gonna see a different look in the bokeh, and the depth of field is gonna be narrow, versus if you use an 18mm lens. So then you have the FG field and BG field multipliers. So let's go here and let's change our f-stop to, let's say, 5.6, and let's actually take a look at the final. So here's where the fields join. I want to take a look at the final FG and BG bokehs now. And so that's our 5.6. Let's say we're using a 2.8, and there it is. And if for some reason you want to keep this aperture but slightly adjust the foreground background, you can say, okay, I want double the scale in the FG multiplier, so now the foreground field is gonna be scaled. And that's a bug you're seeing there, so you probably want to change frame, and that's it. Sometimes that happens. So now you're only scaling the FG field multiplier, so you're only scaling this side of the lens from the circle of confusion towards the camera. So you can leave that at 1 again. And let's say you wanna make the background multiplier half the size, so you can go 0.5, and you can see how the background bokeh gets smaller. At this point you're already faking the lens, so but you have this option available if you need it. So let's leave this at 1. And I think we have already finished seeing the first tab in here. So the lens is already linked to the camera, everything is set up for now. So once you reach this point, as the instructions say here, if you need to animate the focal distance and f-stop, you're going to do this of course in the camera controls. I'm gonna leave this fixed, I'm not animating anything. And now it says start your lens design from top to bottom. So once this tab is set up, we're gonna start from the top. So we're gonna set up our aberrations and lens treatments in this area. Alright, so let's say that the first thing I want to do is to aberrate this image. So let's see the output for this stage of the template. So here you're gonna have original and view helper, and at each stage or important stage of this template you're gonna have these two just to compare what you're doing. So I want to see the output with the view helper there, and I'm gonna open the first Z-Opticals. So as you can see, you can do your 2.5D aberrations. I'm not going to explain this in depth because Z-Opticals already have plenty of tutorials describing what you can do on both sides in these fields. But what I'm going to say, this is like kind of the Z-Optical first pass, and then at the bottom you have the Z-Optical second pass. Usually the second pass is gonna be used for lens distortion and renoise, and the first pass is gonna be used for kind of aberrations and some color corrections probably related to matte box and that kind of thing. Also motion vectors. Sometimes I like to apply the motion vectors before the convolving or defocusing, so I kind of retain the bokeh strictness um, because I'm not blurring it with motion blur after the defocusing, but I'm actually doing that before. This kind of not always works. It depends on the shot. Sometimes you would like to do the opposite, but yeah, it's like the classic question: when to do that, before, after. There's not like a rule. It's up to you. So let's say we have the shot, and I want to close the camera controls, and let's go to the aberrations and enable preview map, and the focus point is already set up automatically. What I mean by that, just let's do that now. If I change the cam focal distance, the aberration depth is going to change. So let's say you have set up your background and foreground aberration here. So it's actually going like so. So let's say we're going to do -10 and 10. So you can see our circle of confusion is this kind of cyan and yellow, and that is kind of where our focus has fall, and some of the fields remain outside the camera. So for example, these greens are behind the camera at this point. And now that we have done that, let's say you later change your focal distance, and your aberration is going to change automatically. So if you change this later, you don't have to worry, all your aberration setup is going to follow, and no problem about that. So let's close this, and let's continue with the aberration. Let's switch that off. Let's go close to some of these features, and let's enable aberration, and we want to add some aberration in here, and I want to boost the detail, and I'm gonna add some vertical shift slightly. If you want to also kind of, I like to use tint frame, not only to tint the frame, but also to kind of look how the aberration is looking, and that's alright. So now I'm gonna tint the frame by a very slight value. So now we have that type of aberration set up. Let's say I'm happy with that, and let's now add some kind of I'm not gonna use spherical aberration now, but something to bear in mind, along with kind of things like motion blur and filtering things. If you're gonna use astigmatism, it's kind of a good idea to use it before the defocusing, so that way it's not like if you use it in the Z-Opticals second pass, you're gonna be kind of blurring your bokeh shapes. So I actually like to do this on the first pass, and let's enable the astigmatism, and let's use sagittal. And if you look at this and we increase the sagittal, you're gonna see the effect. So let's use kind of small amount. Let's adjust the mask. So yeah, I'm happy with that. And let's now leave the vignette for the second pass, and same for the color cast, and same for the bloom. So we have finished the aberrations here. If we switch to matte box, we are gonna probably come back to this in the second pass too, not at this stage. And about the renoise, we're not gonna do anything at this stage. The SD map is also be used on the second pass, but but the motion vectors is something that I want to do at this stage. So my motion vectors are already connected, and again, let's go close to some of these rocks and let's increase this value, and you're going to see that the motion vector picks up. I'm going to change these to linear, and yeah, so let's now pick a more subtle value. So let's say I'm happy with that motion blur amount. So now I have finished setting up this node. If you want to do any treatment here, like for example, maybe you want to do an additional chromatic aberration 2D treatment on both fields or one of both, you can do that. I'm not going to do that now. Then the fields join to a single stream again, and maybe you want to do, let's say, some kind of for some reason you want to do some kind of color correction here, so you have a mask and you're going to do some color correction on both fields. And if you take a look at that, maybe you just want to make this, I don't know, give some blue tint in there, and that's it. So whatever compositing thing you want to do, you can do it here too, or you can do it separately in front or behind the circle of confusion. Then we go to the deep defocusing. We have already set up this, so we can take a look at the final output again. And that's our final output. Below this area you have backdrops suggesting a pre-render or pre-comp, and you're probably going to want to do that because at this point, depending on the resolution of your comp and the amount of things that you have done here and how your lens is set up, etc., you're gonna probably want to make you're gonna want to do a pre-render here. Just remember to include the depth, so the depth must be included downstream for the second Z-Opticals to work. So you do your pre-render, then you have this switch, which is a speed helper. So if you're here and you just want to change this to 1, you're gonna just be going back to the original asset, because maybe you want to leave this like this and you want to work on the second Z-Opticals. Let's actually do that now. Let's leave this helper going to the original, and we are now on the second Z-Opticals, and let's double click there, and I now want to add some lens distortion here. So one of the things that you're going to notice is that we need to crop this, because I have this reformat here. So the way this shot particularly has been set up is that the overscan has been rendered inside the render going to comp. So if I reformat this to 1080 and I leave the resize type at none and I preserve the bounding box, I'm gonna generate this overscan. So let's copy this reformat, and I'm gonna want to copy this reformat to the main 3 inputs for foreground, background, and depth. And now I can see that my SD map here is also 1080. So let's connect our lens distortion there, and let's see the output of these Z-Opticals, and I already have my overscan set up. Let's double click this and let's go to the DTMB setup and let's enable SD map. And when I do that, you're going to see that the lens distortion is already been applied. And what else can we do? I think we haven't seen the matte box setup for this, so let's go back to this output here so we can see the bokeh defocusing. And I want to add a matte box to this bokeh, so let's say this sequence the camera has a matte box on top and bottom of the lens. So let's add a top and bottom here value of say 80 pixels on both fields, and if I enable this we are gonna see a matte box happening on the bokeh. So that's quite aggressive. You can see the bokeh already flattening quite a bit. Let's change the frame if we don't want the bag, so you can see that looks kind of a little bit too much. So let's change this probably to a 50 and let's unpause. Yeah, I think that's better. So you can see how the camera controller is already driving these crops and cropping your incoming kernel image, generating this matte box effect. And now, because we have applied this matte box, maybe you want to go back to the second Z-Opticals and go to the matte box tab and enable the matte box color correction. So because the matte box are on top and bottom, let's add a color correction. If I see the output of this, you can see that I am color correcting the top and bottom matte boxes. So let's leave that something like this, and you can see the difference. We're gonna leave that on. And on the aberrations, let's go back to the aberrations, and I don't wanna add spherical to the shot. Astigmatism has been already applied on the first pass. Let's say we want to add some vignetting. So let's go strong first. Let's define the f-stop and how much is going to be the reach. And let's use a slower value. That's it. It's a very subtle vignetting. Color cast, let's say for some reason you want to add some blue to the bottom of the frame, so you can see how everything is casting a blue cast. So let's go something around 1.2 for the background there, and maybe some subtraction of red on the top, and something like this. Let's say for some reason this is your color cast, and about the bloom probably wanna judge this outputting the defocusing. So let's go back to our speed helper here. Let's turn this into 0, and we're gonna see all the upstream treatments, and that's it. And now let's, as I was saying, add some bloom here, and so yeah, maybe something like that. And let's say you maybe also want to activate bloom on the defocusing. So this is a good point to mention this tab, optical artifacts, which is doing no more and no less than bringing the optical artifacts tab from the bokehs into the camera controls for convenience. So what that means, you're gonna find both foreground and background fields, optical artifacts in this tab. So in addition to what both Z-Opticals do aberration wise, you can do this here. So maybe you want to add some bloom to the background field, and let's add a value of 2 so we can see, and you can see how already it's picking up some contrast in those stars in the background. So it's getting quite heavy. That's why you want to pre-render the defocusing stage. Think about this as you're not only using one bokeh in deep compositing, you're not only using 2, so you really want to pre-render those. And maybe you want to add some chromic aberration, which is going to add some contamination to the real aberration of the bokeh kernel images that you added, but just for demonstration, let's add some chromic aberration, and you're going to see how some new extra aberration is popping up. So as you can see, you have plenty of options. You probably want to make this, you want to keep this simple, and really before doing anything in this template, you want to think about your lens design, or if you're sampling a real lens, really have in mind how your aberration should look, and only adjust the things that you need. Maybe if you want to use chromic aberration, you have to match these RGB values to your real lens, so you get something that makes sense on your render, on what your render or your lens design is giving you at the end of this template. So let's compare what we have done. I think we have finished our treatment, and let's close this, and let's make the viewer a bit bigger, and let's also copy one of these reformat to the original here, and we can see the result of our lens design. Let's do a wipe. You can see the effect of the matte box and the color cast in this area. I think this template might be useful in some of your pipelines. You probably want to pick up this template and further develop it in your compositing department, or maybe you're a TD and you want to pick up from these ideas and improve this or adapt it to the pipeline you're working on. And I hope this is useful to you, and hope to see you on the next video. Take care, and until next time.